Hi everyone, welcome to the Baliheart podcast. I'm starting this as a way of putting the spotlight on Bali's culture and in particular the way that navigates many different kind of forces and currents in its environment to preserve the well-being of its people. I think lots of different countries and people all over the world. And Balinese could learn from each other about how well they do that. So that's why I'm doing this. On my shoulder here is Mr. In Between. He's topping Garland that I found just a street art in a couple of places near the airport. And when I dug into it, turns out he's a character from traditional Balinese opera, and he's kind of idealized for not necessarily a real king, historical king, but maybe more of an archetype, and he's characterized by in-between leadership. So he's trying to navigate different polar opposites, bureaucratic and organic, agile and more what would be the opposite of agile, more careful, prudent, perhaps, and so on and so forth, in order to always find the way forward, with the people and with the wider forces surrounding Bali. And I think this is an important story to pull out and kind of really polish and um, make available to Balinese themselves, through interviews and podcasts, show Balinese what awesome things they're doing to each other. And also, I think, our wider society has a lot that it could learn from this example too. A little bit more about me. My name's Hamish. I worked in local government for 13 years in Auckland Council, starting off in libraries and moving through to community development and community innovation. And I found that an important part of the work was, especially as a white man, you know, we've, us whiteys have colonized lots of different people, but I think we've also colonized ourselves very heavily. And so before, or, at the same time as doing work, we also need to unpack that and, sort of unpack some of those layers of self-colonization in order to be less dangerous and more helpful. It's a very happy memory of colleague Tammy and a good friend of mine that we went over to Canberra to present some work at the Alive Symposium, which was focused on mental health and well-being, and that's Phil Walker, who's a real legend and one of the organisers of that. So when I was working in government, I was working a lot around a method called inclusive co-creation, which is quite a step change for community development. Really trying to get lots of people, all different walks of life, involved in doing stuff together and building lots of social capital. But what I found is that actually often the white people in communities in New Zealand were the least ready for to get involved with this, and then the systems that were built on those people weren't really ready for this. And when I moved to Bali, found that maybe they were more so. Um, found me, I'm intense and sensitive, which means I have kind of special gifts in terms of being able to think and feel deeply and quickly. I could come up with insights, but I have some special needs too. Like I need more support with feeling grounded, regulating my emotions. And I found that Bali was really an amazing place for that. I wanted to tell you a little story that's kind of funny to illustrate this. So, this is a couple of friends at Ahmed Cafe, which is way out on the east coast, and on the left is Sunariani, who's kind of like my aunt slash guardian angel. I was staying here for quite a while, and it was low season, so I talked to these guys heaps and really got to know them. And on the right is his nickname. I forget his real name, but his nickname was Wayan Crazy because he's kind of like a crazy young man, just trying lots of things, full of beans, much like I was, same age. And when I was there, it happened to be Nyepi, which is when evil spirits are said to invade the island. So you have to stay inside. Actually, everyone is made to stay inside, including foreigners. They had to comply. And probably good at the idea because I don't want to get nabbed by some evil spirits on the day. I don't know about you. But the day before that, there's an interesting sort of pre-celebration where these ogos, these evil spirits, there's big statues of them created, and then young men pick them up and parade them towards the town centre. But anyway, I was looking for petrol that day and an ATM to get some cash out. I was running low on cash, and out in the country, there's less places with tap to pay and stuff like that. But I went further and further north and ended up at this beautiful little cafe, but still hadn't found an ATM and started coming back. And ended up in one of the towns where they're doing this celebration. And one of the things that they do before they do all that stuff with the big Ogo statues is that the boys, all the boys in the village, the young men and younger boys as well, bring out big speaker and take up basically half the road, shut down half the road to be dancing all over the place. And I join in this, and it's great fun. But then the Ogo celebration starts to really pack in. All the people are coming in, like thousands of people all sort of thronging into the center. So here I am with no cash left, starting to get really hungry, and my scooter's trapped amongst thousands of people. And I sort of start fading because I've been dancing and using energy, but not having anything to eat. And in the evening, Sunariani spots me and is like, "Hey, Michelle, all right?" And I was like, "No, not particularly all right." So she gets me bananas and water out of her own personal pocket, which is a lifesaver at that point, and not something that she needed to do at all. Completely. This is not even near the hotel where she works. It's up the road in the next village. But that's how the people are here. They care, and they reach out and they help support all the time. Just a little more generally about my trip. This is from the airport. You can kind of see the way that this indigenous layer of belief systems, which has Hinduism and a little bit of Buddhism layered on top, and you can feel it from when you get in the airport. Like, it's just, it's so alive, and that's because it's been protected by that in between leadership. Um, and it's, this is a Mexican cantina near the airport, so it's integrating and bringing in all sorts of different elements, which are a natural fit for Bali. So it's so generative there. This is the massage table. Always, they always have little flowers there. This is back in Ubud again. So they do so much to heal people that come to see them. And in any little village that you go to, there'll be a table of guys like these. If they're wearing the black shirts, it's kind of like a village village indigenous policeman type role, as far as I can tell. They're so friendly, and they want to show you like the mods they've done on their scooters and things like that. So you never feel like you're alone, because literally you roll up anywhere and people are curious. They want to know you. They want to help out. They want to they want to build relationships. And this is the yoga retreat, which was, I think, is co-managed by a Balinese and a Balinese man, Western lady couple, and there's a Balinese owner, I believe, Shantatoya, and another great example of this kind of synthesis between different cultures, and that leads to something. And in the morning and the afternoon, there's yoga, which is like more like the international yoga that we know, and then in the middle of the day, there's little cultural learnings like this. Here we learn how to create little offerings to the gods, which they do every single day and put around the properties. There's a bush that the bush is so helpful. Seems to calm down your mind straight away, just being in it. They've certainly integrated nightclubs into their culture around the cities, which was another way that I was recuperating. But also going to the biggest temple, and they protect their culture. This is on Baliheart, another big ceremonial bay. Went to the biggest temple. It's all blocked off the top part to foreigners. They don't just want tourists snapping pictures of their more sacred their temple, and the ceremonies being done by ordinary Balinese there. So they kind of cordoned that off. I said, well, actually, I'd like to pray there and really connect with those Hindu gods. And it's like, oh, you want to pray? And so when the cordon was lifted and went up there and had quite a powerful experience. Tirika, I think it's called Tirika. There's the holy water, which is quite an important part of the local belief system and rites. And yeah, some holy water was put on me. Monkeys! Street art. So vibrant, so generative. More tattoos. One tattoo is of the old Bali, the popping down, and one tattoo is the new Bali. And I saw a replica of Banksy, the one where the guy's throwing the bottle, but it's got flowers in it instead of a Molotov cocktail. So just, bringing in different influences generatively to enrich their own culture, but protect it and evolve it all at the same time. And so I was kind of getting all these impressions of different things that were inspiring me. But when I was in Ubud, which is my favorite place where I'm staying now, having come back to Bali, I happened upon this book and read it in the last few months, and it kind of really pulled the big picture together of what had been happening. So, what I've noticed that in between leadership, of navigating between disparate elements. Michel Picard talks about dialogic construction of Balinese identity. And so that's, when you take an antithesis, thesis and antithesis, and you synthesize them together. But it's actually more complicated than that. For example, I always like to use the example of belief systems and religion. So there's diverse indigenous systems which have some things in common, but lots of differences too in the detail. Each village has its own different gods. And then above that, you've got a Hindu layer, but it's not the Hindu, it's Hindu that's come through hundreds of years ago. So it's evolved in its own direction, mixed with the indigenous religion, so a bit different from Indian Hinduism. And then you've got a certain amount of Buddhism mixed in with that. And then Christianity and Islam were both breathing down the necks of the Balinese, so they skillfully incorporated different elements in different ways from those religions in order to sort of satisfy the conversion appetites of those, and also, put up a stop sign to prevent sort of wholesale conversion and cultural destruction. And more recently, Indonesia wanted to implement culture for tourism, which could have been quite extractive and destructive, but the Balinese flipped that to tourism for culture, or both ways around. So they repositioned that so that the profits, they could make profits off of cultural tourism, but also protect their culture, but also allow people to, invite people to see their culture, their religion, their practices, without destroying them, but actually being more reflective and performative, while still being authentic about their own cultural practices, and coming across resources which they could use to strengthen their own literal, material well-being, and strengthen their cultural practices as well. And I think if I compare that to our Western countries, where we sort of have a case of mono, and using a bit of a wordplay there, because that's known as the kissing disease, but I think it's anything but in the West. So we have, monotheism instead of a diverse pantheon of gods. We have monogamy, so there's only one way to have relationships. We have transgender people, but are they really welcomed and accepted, or is there pressure to be that mono? and it's sort of like mono size fits all for all these different aspects. Compare that to Balinese. It's so radically inclusive in the way that we talk about with the West, but we're not actually able to achieve it. And inclusive of neurodiversity, I find too, because my gifts are much more accepted and my special needs are much more supported here. And I hear that from transgender people here too. So yeah, what I would like to do in this podcast is a podcast blog with interviews is talk to and show a whole bunch of different people, projects, organizations, companies, institutions in Bali that illustrate this dialogic in between leadership process that keeps Bali safe while allowing Bali to benefit other people and benefit its own people. Keep things adaptable, not black and white, evolutionary, diverse. And I think that you know it might be useful to highlight these different projects and things so that Balinese can see each other how well they're doing this. And then in the wider Indonesia, they've always had an outsized influence and impact culturally. So this is kind of in that same strain. And then wider again, I just think in the world at large, especially Western democratic countries, we've got so much to learn to unpack case of modern. But yeah, I don't want this to be a me talking head thing. I just wanted to do one episode to sort of set up the framework of what's happening, and then yeah, I really want all of your thoughts and reflections and ways that you'd like to build on this, or what you're curious about. Do you have ideas for further episodes? Would you like to collaborate? And so on and so forth. This is really such a passion project for me, as you can probably tell. It's very close to my heart. So I invite you to this very interesting journey with me, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.